Hi everyone, how's it going? My name is Laura, WISA's community manager, and it's an honor to be here with the LinkedIn team for their strategic partner webinar. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce you a little bit more about the WISA's organization. WISA's is a 501c nonprofit whose mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cyber. WISA's is made up of over 8.7 thousand women, men, and non-binary individuals in over 86 countries. We have 63 professional affiliates who are an extension of WISA's all over the world, 225 student chapters, and that's just their community alone. What we do is create accessibility and opportunities to cybersecurity. We layer with mentorship, resources, and we align it all with our strategic partners, and we create a place where everyone belongs in cybersecurity. We do it through our many initiatives. We have our skill development training programs, our scholarship grants and awards. We have our annual conference that's coming up in April 2024 next year. We have our Job Board Plus Plus, where members can upload their resume and strategic partners can recruit year round. We have our leadership series. We have our mentor mentee program, which currently has over 1.6 thousand WISI members enrolled. And we have all of this and so much more. All of our wonderful initiatives to our strategic partners that fund our organization all year round. We have our tier 1 partners being Akamai, Amazon, AT&T Cybersecurity, Battelle, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon University, Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Ford, Fortinet, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, Sandia National Laboratories, and SentinelOne. And for the purpose of today's webinar, we have the LinkedIn team today presenting on the topic Beyond the Surface, exploring the inner working and the different facets of corporate identity management. And this is your opportunity to ask the questions all throughout the webinar because we will be answering them live. And just a friendly reminder, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our WISA's newsletter so you can find out more, and you can do so by going into wisas.org to the right-hand corner and subscribing. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the LinkedIn team on the topic of Beyond the Surface, and I'll let Tyler take it over. Tyler.
Yeah, Laura, thanks for that warm introduction. I'd like to, first of all, give a shout out to the Women in Cybersecurity organization. This has been a fantastic partnership for us at LinkedIn. We really appreciate everything that we do together and look forward to continuing building the future of cybersecurity. So thank you. With that said, I'm Tyler Elliott. I'll be the host for today's roundtable. I've been at LinkedIn for 9 years, spending the last 3 years as an engineering manager within our information security organization. Fun fact about me, I've got 3 kids, all under 10, currently in 6 sports, and they're all off of school today. So they've been instructed not to interrupt, but if anybody has kids, you know how well they follow instruction. I'll hand it over to the rest of our group. Let's meet Priyanka. Just you'll have to unmute first. We can read lips, but not quite that well.
Okay, yeah, that's good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Priyanka Jain. I've been working as a senior information security engineer at LinkedIn for the last 4 years, and I primarily work on identity and access governance within corporate identity team. And I'm so excited to be here today and share all my learnings with all of you and encourage you to join corporate identity team in the future.
Awesome. How about you, Akansha? Or Julie?
Hey, good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Akanksha. I have been with LinkedIn for more than 6 years now. At present, I hold the role of staff security engineer with the corporate identity security team, where my focus revolves primarily around the identity and access management, right? It's a pleasure to be here as a panelist today and have the opportunity to engage in a meaningful conversation with all of you. Looking forward for this. Thank you.
I guess last but not the least, hi everyone, I'm Julie. My last name is Madhusudanan, and my alias has always been Julie Matt. If you want to call me Julie Matt, that's totally fine by me. I've been at LinkedIn for a little over a year, so I guess I'm the newbie in this group, so to speak. But I head up corporate identity, and all these wonderful folks happen to be a part of my team. Excited to be here. I've heard so much about WISES, and I know you have a long-standing relationship with LinkedIn. But anyway, if you ever join LinkedIn, I promise and guarantee you, you will be integrating with our team one way or another. So looking forward to the conversation today.
That is very true, Julie. You will find your way across our team. Okay, so let's start by getting to know, or letting all of you get to know our group a little bit better, and more specifically, how you found your way to the cybersecurity space and what keeps you here. Let's start with Akansha. How did you end up in cybersecurity, and what keeps you here?
So my career journey has been quite interesting, right? I initially began as a Java developer, but my career took an unexpected turn when my first company assigned me to an infrastructure project, right? At that point, I had very limited knowledge about identity and access management, patching, authentication, and all the related concepts that I'm working on right now, right? So they actually gave me like a 3-month window to decide whether I want to continue in this new direction or revert to my role back as a Java developer, right? And during those 3 months, I think I had the opportunity to dive into the world of corporate identity, identity and access management, and I realized the vast potential that this field has, right? Also, I discovered this close connection between identity and security, right? That they go hand in hand. And this alignment, I think it became even more apparent as our organizations merged within the company, right? So this shift actually allowed me to dive into the world of security. And now, whatever solutions that we are building, right, we just keep that security aspect into mind, right? So that's how I entered into this world of security.
Awesome. Quite the journey. How about you, Julie?
Thank you, Akansha. That's very interesting. I have to say the same in the sense that my journey into the cybersecurity domain was rather unusual in the sense that I did have an engineering background. I've been in the industry for almost 27 years. I've dabbled with security a little bit here and there. I mean, all of us do, right, when you're in product engineering, but never really gotten into the domain or became an expert in it. So when this opportunity came up at LinkedIn, I will be honest, I always thought that security required this special DNA, or like were just geeky folks that I could never perhaps relate to, and they just were a class apart, which they probably are. But my point is, I was a little intimidated by this whole domain. So when I spoke to the folks at LinkedIn, I was pleasantly surprised, quite honestly, to find out that these are engineering concepts, just differently pivoted. And so, you know, that a lot of my experience actually might be of value, and I get to be, you know, along with the, you know, play along with the cool kids, if you will, and catch the hackers and think ahead of the hackers and all of that cool stuff. So I couldn't resist the opportunity, and I haven't really regretted my decision because there's so much to learn. And there's just things that are so dynamically changing all the time in terms of both technology as well as the approaches both hackers as well as companies take to be proactive, that I've really enjoyed being here. But the journey, you know, I never imagined when I started that I would end up in the security domain. Neither did I with the experience I had. So I hope that kind of showcases to all of you that, you know, the path to get to security can be very diverse, but you can still be here, learn, grow, and have fun.
Awesome. Love it. And Priyanka, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I started my career in the identity space as a first job out of college, and I have around a total of 10 years of experience. So I kind of started with manual testing within the identity space, and then moved on to a development role where I actually, started developing solutions for different business problems like when, for example, when employees join any new organization, they need certain access to do their job, like email access or username for the laptop, and also different set of permissions to do their work, right? So my team and I are responsible for that. So I also manage employees life cycle end to end. So that's how I ended up working in the identity space.
I love it. And the thing I notice, and this is true for me too, I've been in product engineering my whole career, and was working at LinkedIn in product engineering, and really, really like LinkedIn, but wanted to do something different. And that was an opportunity that LinkedIn affords you, is to try different things out. And I came to InfoSec because it was different, and I had friends over there, and it's turned out to be fantastic. A really interesting space, like everybody said, really fantastic people. It tends to attract unique thinkers and just great people to work with. And I love just hearing all the different ways that we came, the different reasons that we stay. It's pretty cool. So let's talk a little bit about some of the subject we've been getting into. We're talking about this corporate identity and access management. And so when I use LinkedIn and other websites, I type in my username and password and get authenticated. What's different about corporate identity, Julie, than from what we experience when we're just using the internet out there?
It's a great question, Tyler. And coming into this space, I had the same question as well. I was like, well, it's all about creating a profile, logging in, and you're done, right? Like, what's the big deal? It is a big deal because, and then there is a succinct difference as well. So, I mean, if you think about identity in general, when we talk about member identity or we talk about info worker identity, and so there is a profile that you create, right? In order to log in, you have to create your profile. And then once you do that and you try to log in, there's the authentication and authorization piece. The two of them, what they do is, one, the first piece validates that you are indeed who you say you are. And then the second one, like access management that Tyler was referring to, once you log in, you really have access to all the resources you try to sort of reach, right? So along those lines, yes, they're very identical. But when you think about an info worker, this is an employee at the company who has access to all the confidential information that a company has, the data that it holds. And so it becomes much more intriguing and interesting and complex because you have to think of the journey of an employee through the company, from the time they start, right, through the role transitions they might have while at the company to the time they leave the company. And what kinds of access management, just-in-time access or access to resources, or how that changes if you become a manager, because now you need to access the data of your report. It's very, very intriguing in that sense. Plus, think about how times have changed. In the past, there was a firewall, and anyone who connected to the corporate network had a valid ID, could access resources within the firewall, and the concept was that all the bad actors lived outside the firewall. So that's not true anymore. Technology has progressed. If you think of the pandemic and how people started working from home, there's actually good actors both inside and outside the firewall. And in addition, there's also bad actors unintentionally, perhaps, within the company who, due to being unaware or do something bad that could potentially affect the company. So it's pretty complex in that sense because you have to be flexible. You have to keep up with how technology is changing. And again, super important for the company to thrive, irrespective of the product or the services that it delivers to delight its customers. Security is mainstream, right? Like you really have to think about how to protect the company and its resources and yet make it delightful for the employees to do their work.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Our job is hard. You're right. I think that's why they pay us the big bucks, right? Well, let's go to Akansha, getting into a little bit more about the challenges of this job. How would you describe the unique challenges that you face in managing corporate identities? What's your take on what makes this so complex?
So I think I completely agree with what Julie said, right? There are so many different services that are there that needs to be managed, right? And that's the biggest challenge that managing corporate identity actually poses, right? Which is like interconnected nature of all these services, right? Where if you make changes in one service, right, that ripples across all the services. For instance, our we have our implementation of multi-factor authentication, right? Where once you enter your password, you're prompted for another question or another way of authenticating yourself, proving who you are, right? Now, that is one of the critical components of corporate identity security. Now, just imagine if our multi-factor authentication solution is supposed to be compromised, right? Or it was compromised, it could potentially impact all our other services, right? Example, your single sign-on, your authentication services, your authorization services, everything, right? That's why I feel that one of the biggest challenge is to maintain a robust security posture across all the services, right? Whether it's like the core service that we call it as T0 or the ancillary service that we call it as T1, right? And this web of dependencies that's there, right? I think that adds complexity to the corporate identity management. That's the biggest challenge that I face.
Yeah, I mean the stakes are really high here. If somebody gets in, it's not like if somebody compromises a user account, that's bad, but they only affect that user. But if they compromise an employee account, they could potentially affect all the users and all the employees. Priyanka, how about you? What's your take on the unique challenges here in our space?
Yeah, Kansha like explained with a very good example here. So according to me, what I feel is, to make sure there are no weak spots or gaps, present in our security network, like framework. So in order to achieve that, we need to ensure that we keep all our services, tools, infrastructure, like safe from these vulnerabilities and, these issues. So we need to keep ourselves informed about these vulnerabilities and updates and apply that to our infrastructure. So the other challenges that I feel is to make sure that all our systems are very secure and strong, so they meet the changing security rules. So since this security posture is dynamic and it's constantly changing, so we have to quickly adapt those based on the needs. Also, we need to spend time in training employees and creating awareness among employees, like how to keep these things secure and protect their identities.
Wow, there's a lot to do here. I got a question for the whole panel here, which is what does the typical day of work look like for you? Because it sounds like there's more work than you can pack into one day. So if you were to create a version of a day in the life for a security professional, and we'll start with Julie, what does that day look like?
I think the day is very unbounded, is the way I think about it, because these issues can pop up at any point in time. And so, I mean, we've talked about global teams, right? Like within our company, we have a very distributed global team. But I think it just pick a day, you might have an issue that you need to go address. And so I feel like the flexibility to kind of be able to manage your work and life, not within a time-bound set of hours, is going to be key. And that's been typical for me being in this domain, because the company literally expects us to keep them secure. And so it is a very important priority.
Yeah, and then let's jump back to Priyanka. Day in the life, what are you doing from when you wake up until you go to sleep to keep LinkedIn secure?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Julie had mentioned, right? So as I mentioned, like, my job more revolves around, managing the identity governance. So I usually start my day with, if there are any issues assigned to me, and then I start with focus on any project work, right? So I manage the entire life cycle of user identities, like from onboarding to offboarding. So it includes like creating user accounts, modifying the user accounts, or deactivating the user accounts if whenever it's required. I also conduct periodic access reviews to ensure that user has the appropriate set of access based on their roles. This involves like reviewing the user's permissions, privileged access, right, and make necessary actions on it. I often collaborate with different teams like IT teams and different security teams for any new implementation that needs to be designed. I also do a lot of code reviews and unblock people if something is required from my end. And lastly, like, before I conclude my day, I review all my tasks and update the progress and make a to-do list for the next day.
Wow, I think if I was following your plan, I would be a lot more efficient in my work. I think I'm a little bit more like Julie, jumping and reacting, and what does the company need today? And but I like your plan better. I think I might try that out next week. I don't know if I can fit it in this week. Akansha, take us through a typical day for you.
Yeah, so for me, it's primarily identity and access management engineer, right? A typical work day. I usually start my day by checking emails, I think, which all of us does, right? And messages that probably need urgent attention, right? Because as I think Julie mentioned, we don't have like a fixed day of how the work would look like, right? Sometimes we might have a P0 or P1 that we might need to jump into and take handover from the US teams, right? But some of the requests that we get on a daily basis include like granting or revoking the access permissions which are there, right, based on job and responsibilities, or continuously reviewing and updating the policies and procedures that we have, right, just to align it with the organization's security requirements and compliance regulations and all of those things, right? And then if there are any security related incidents, right, we need to investigate and respond promptly to those, right, which definitely involves like analyzing some logs, identifying the security breaches, and then taking the corrective actions, right? And I also agree with what Priyanka mentioned. We collaborate a lot with the other teams, right, like network security teams, the application developer teams, just to ensure that all of our solutions are all of our approaches have like the security and access management to that, right? And then we have a lot of meetings with colleagues and stuff just to discuss different projects and how we can improve our way of dealing. So that's what a typical work week would look like, right? Including all of these things.
Yeah,
If
a
I
lot.
may jump in real quick, Tyler, I mean, I want to
Please.
add on, like, as messy and chaotic as it seems, honestly, there's a pulse to it, the sense of satisfaction you get, because the feedback is always instant. Either you're doing fantastic or you're not. And either way, you don't have a choice because you have to keep going. But what I really wanted to share is there's a chaotic aspect to it, but we are proactively thinking about how we can get better. So there's the typical, like, we set a strategy, we have a vision, we have planning in place. And so we do follow all of those norms, so to speak, to be as planful as possible. But the reality is what you heard from me and Priyanka and Akansha.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are rhythms and patterns that we follow, and certain points of the year and month and quarter where we do know what we're going to be doing, but there's all these moments where you're learning something new and jumping in. It's very very dynamic for sure. So we've talked about us doing our work, but we also serve the rest of the company and people doing their own work. And there's this dynamic of how do we enable them to do their work? How do we keep them happy? And how do we keep LinkedIn secure? Because we could just leave all the doors open. That would make everybody's lives very easy. Or we could shut everything down and make it so you have to check in and log in with every action. There's a balance to be had there. Julie, from your leadership position, how do you balance that? How do you make decisions and ensure that people can be happy but and productive and secure at the same time?
That's a fabulous question, Tyler, because it's hard, right? There's no way to say other than it's very, very nuanced. There's no easy way to do it. You do end up making people unhappy at times. But here's what I'll boil it down to. At the end of the day, this team is responsible for ensuring that the company can keep its assets secure, and people obviously, but assets secure, make sure that the resources that people need access to is indeed accurate, and that we are preserving sort of the principles that the company adheres itself to. That is our number one priority. We try to do that in as seamless a way, building elegant solutions, making it less painful for people. But alongside that, just as critical is the experience of a developer or a person or an employee working at the company. Because we don't want to introduce roadblocks that make it less productive for an employee to get their work done. So both go hand in hand. And so the way I think about it is are we improving the security posture? Are we keeping the company secure? And are we improving the productivity and experience of the employee? So that's why I started by saying it's difficult and complex, and it's really hard to do, but we keep that in mind. Now, here's an example. We recently went passwordless within the company, right? It was a hard project, and along the way, there were like questions, and people were like, well, what does that mean, right? But once it was delivered, it definitely improves the posture for the company, security posture for the company, and the experience is better because we have practiced this metric. We know that the number of attempts people have to make in order to log into various resources and the time it takes has come down. So ultimately, everybody is seeing sort of the benefit of doing that work. That's the way I think about it. We try to accomplish both, but we do have a priority in terms of how we go about it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a fantastic example. And you mentioned this this passwordless project that we did at LinkedIn recently, and this is a way to authenticate where you don't remember your password and you don't you don't have an app that you're taking out to type in a number or something. You literally touch your fingerprint to your computer, and it's a fantastic user experience because you're not remembering that password, you're not typing something, and you're just acknowledging that you're there. And from a security perspective, it's actually more secure than all those other methods because we know it's you using your laptop because that's the way that factor is enrolled. And it was just such a great example of a win-win. I'm glad you shared that with people because there is that opportunity to not just make things more secure, but to really delight people with how you're improving the systems. Yeah, I love that. I love that thing that we were able to deliver to people at LinkedIn. And but you're right. We do have that priority list, and ultimately, if it's not secure, well, it's not running. So let's talk a little bit about another part of the employee experience, and that's around remote work. Priyanka, with the rise of remote work, what challenges and opportunities has that presented to us in corporate identity, and how should organizations adapt to secure the remote access effectively?
Yeah, definitely the rise of remote work has definitely brought, a lot of challenges. So what I see is, I feel there is an increased attack surface which is happening. Since people started, working from home, there are now different kinds of devices. They work from different location, and from different networks they are, right? So attackers have got more entry points to target these people. Hence, the other challenges which brings in is to kind of secure remote devices, right? Like laptops, smartphones. Since these devices actually contain a lot of data, it stores a lot of data, right? So protecting this data is also very, very important. So maintaining this cloud data security with when it is being accessed in the remote devices is very challenging. So the organization should start implement cloud security and other data encryption techniques, and as Julie mentioned, strong authentication methods like passwordless solutions to secure remote access.
Awesome. So remote work is maybe one of the biggest changes that we've had over the last couple of years. Akansha, I'd be interested to, I think I can ask this question to everybody, but let's start with Akansha. How do you see the industry changing and growing? What's on the horizon? What else has been new lately?
So I feel this industry is definitely very dynamic, right? And it has evolved ever since at least I joined this industry, right? First thing is definitely remote work that you already spoke about, right? We've seen a huge shift in remote work, right? And the other thing that we've seen is that companies are now starting to use what is called as a zero trust model, right? I think it might sound new to everyone over here, right? But all it means is that nobody, right? Nobody, when I say nobody, not even the employees, get automatic access to the company's network or the company's resources, right? Everyone has to continuously prove their identity to make sure that all the information stays safe and you have access to whatever resources you need, right? Just on a fun part, right? You can just think of it as a nightclub bouncer, right? Who checks your ID every time you step inside the club, right? Even if you just stepped out of a second, he'll not allow you to enter until your identity is checked, right? That's what is a zero trust model. And that is the biggest shift that most of the companies are now shifting towards, right? Also, I think as Priyanka mentioned, all of us are working remotely, most of us, right? So we are using our personal phones, our personal laptops and devices from anywhere and everywhere across the globe, right? So companies are definitely investing more into how to make sure that these devices are secure, right? Because people need to be more aware about not clicking on phishing emails, using strong authentication methods, not opening any of the websites that comes into picture, right? So we need to make sure that all our information, all our devices are protected, right? No matter where we are logging in from. So I think it will be really interesting to see what new technologies, what new tools come in, right, to achieve all of this.
Yeah, we're going to hand it back over to Priyanka on what you see the changes in our industry coming up to be, maybe what you're excited about. What would you share?
Yeah, so Akansha actually covered a lot of points, right? So what I feel is, as we mentioned earlier, like the technology is changing really fast, and because of these changes, there are like bad elements on the internet who like want to harm business, and they are getting smarter and smarter. Like these means that like companies have to be very careful to protect their systems from these threats, right? So one way is to make sure that we introduce advanced way to check if someone who they are. So again, this comes to a passwordless solutions, like to prove your identity. Like it could be either a password and a verification code, or using some kind of pass keys and unique features like fingerprints, right, to make sure it's really you. And as Akansha mentioned, like companies actually started investing in these tools to keep their information safe in the cloud. And also, I've seen in the lately, like some of the companies started adapting AI to make these processes, security process, like better and faster. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where we are heading towards, like more advanced future in technology and security.
Awesome. Yeah, it is. Uh, it is changing very quickly and all the time, and you said it. That is a good description of what's happening. Julie, what's your take on industry growth here and what's changing?
Yeah, I mean, everything that's been said so far is all intriguing and very, I mean, it's just hard to predict which way we're going to go, right? So we're keeping our eyes peeled and trying to stay ahead of the curve. For me, just this concept of identity, right? Like, Priyanka, you mentioned AI. I mean, if you take a very basic scenario of like there's full-time employees, there's part-time employees, there's contractors, and some of them need permanent access, some of them need just-in-time access. How do you evolve the ecosystem so that, you just have a profile and automatically, based on your role and based on the work you do and the kind of operations you need, we can actually have some kind of magical way to determine exactly what you need access to. So that would be the most secure way of doing things. Why would you always want to have access to certain, especially confidential information? Sometimes certain roles and certain operations need access to that data, but how can we make it more secure? I think it starts with the concept of what an identity is. Today, it's very tightly tied to a person, but as we all know, being in the domain, there's service accounts, there's accounts where you need to temporarily have like mailbox accounts to send out email. So it's just, I think the notion of identity can be revisited, and I know there's work happening in this space, and I know AI can help us with that. And so for me, that's just one example of what I'm excited about and what's to come.
Yeah, fantastic. The future is bright. So we've talked a lot about what this job is and what we do and what the challenges are and what's on the horizon. If this interests me and I want to start getting into this space, if I'm newer in school, I might not have access to a big corporate network to experiment on or to try technologies out in. And so for people who are just getting started, what can they do to explore this space of corporate identity? How can they play around and start building skills? And Priyanka, why don't you give your take on what might be possible?
Okay, so in my opinion, like, a great place to start is, there are different online platforms that we have on the internet. For instance, LinkedIn Learning offers a variety of courses where, you can enroll yourselves with different courses like single sign-on, which explains about how, different websites can use one set of credentials, multi-factor authentication, where one can learn about different authentication methods that require the user to provide two or more ways of identity verification. And also you can learn about like some basics of identity and access management, which gives you an overall understanding about the infrastructure of the IAM, how it works. Personally, what I feel is it's very important that you have a strong foundation by understanding these core concepts, right? So in future, like if you adapt any of these tools, it is very easy because you have core knowledge of these concepts. So yeah, and participating in webinars, events, can give you an idea how this industry operates in the day-to-day life. If one want to get an real-time experience, like get a hands-on experience, right? So Microsoft provides $150 Azure credit for a year, where you can spin up your own VM and play around with the cloud Azure identity. So you can refer to the Microsoft Learning portal for step-by-step instructions for that. You can always read about some blogs about what is happening in the industry, right? Like some real-time examples about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if
go ahead.
no, I just want to add last point. Like, but if you want to gain more years of experience, I would say it would come only after you enter your professional journey.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I love that. It's and did I catch that correctly? That if you want to actually try out and start doing some things with identity management, you can actually go configure maybe an Active Directory or something like that on Azure and actually try it out and use the real tools.
Yes, correct.
No, that's great. So let's turn to how you know that you're doing a good job within corporate identity. Akansha, how can we measure success? This isn't like a website with users where we can see, hey, we released a feature and now the users are using the feature more. Our users are employees and they have to use the features, right? This is how they work. So how do we measure success and how do we know that we're doing a good job or a bad job?
I think that's a hard question to answer because everyone is going to have their own perspective, right? But to me, I think when we
makes it a
measure
wonderful question.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think to me, when we talk about measuring success, right, it's like keeping our finger on the pulse of how we are doing, right? That clearly reflects how we are doing as professionals, right, in treating our customers. I think there are some basic principles that we follow across all facets, right? Not only corporate identity management, where the first one is definitely feedback, right? Which applies to all of us, I think, across everything that we do, right? Feedback is the biggest way of measuring success of how you are doing, right? So what we do is we often ask people who are using our tools, our services, right? Even our stakeholders and team members, right? Regarding what we are doing, how we are doing, and if there are any areas of improvement, right? So this helps us to see if they are happy, which means we are doing a pretty fair job, and if there are any areas where we can improve, right? I think that's the first thing. The second thing that we do is to set some service level objectives, right, which are also called SLOs. So for understanding, you can think of it as like the services that we provide, right? We set some goals to meet those services, right? So these goals make sure that our customers get a reliable and a consistent experience when they use what we offer, right? So I think all of these measures are like our way of making sure that our customers are happy, our employees are happy with what we provide them, what we do, right? And we also have some helpful tools like some data analysis tricks that let us keep an eye ourselves on how we are doing ourselves, right? So it's like having our dashboards for performance of different services, showing whether we are meeting the targets, showing whether our systems are compliant or not, right? So I think through all these methods, right, our main aim is to ensure that all our systems are always up and running and all our services are readily available to the users to use, right? So I think that's the way.
Yeah, I really would like what you said in there about feedback, and that feedback's important in all aspects, not just in the work, but even for yourselves, because it really gives you the perspective of how other people are seeing what you're doing, not just how you see what you're doing. And it can be good data, whether it's right or you agree, it is somebody's perspective, and getting that feedback in and hearing it is just super valuable, and great to have that in our work, and also in your own growth and development is a fantastic avenue. So we're going to do one more question here to kind of segue into audience questions, and this is sort of a question that I think will be useful to our audience. This is around advice that you would give to people just entering their career, and so we're going to start with Julie on what advice you'd give somebody trying to get into cybersecurity, maybe from a non-technical background. What advice would you give them?
The biggest thing that I think is important in the security domain and engineering in general is the curiosity and open-mindedness, right? Like, if you're curious and you want to learn, there's always a way to do it. And so for me, I think in the security domain, it stands really true that if you're kind of ahead of the curve in understanding what's new out there, what new technologies exist, how do hackers actually attack these domains and company resources, and put yourself out there in learning how these things are done, and have sort of that curiosity and, like I said, open-mindedness to absorb that information and then translate that into something effective, it's a powerful sort of superpower to have that'll help you succeed in this domain. So I'm kind of keeping it basic and simple because, like I said, I was very intimidated when I thought of the security domain. And now, having been here for a little while, I realized that some of the basic skills do apply and mean a lot to the security domain. So my suggestion would be very curious, go read up, like Priyanka suggested, LinkedIn Learning, go find out more, go explore, and I promise you'll be delighted.
Fantastic. And Priyanka, what advice would you give somebody just starting out?
Yep, sorry.
No.
So let's say, I wanted to give a different perspective here. Like, it doesn't require that, you are from a tech background or a non-tech background, right? Let's say if you come from a non-technical background, right? You can still go ahead and learn different courses which are there. But I would say from my personal experience, since I was in a testing role, right? So make sure that, you dwell into, like, if you're going into cybersecurity, you make sure that you learn at least one programming language, whether you are good in Java or Python or any different language, right? So it is easy to, you can convert your role from a non-tech to a tech role. So that way, it is easy to get into even an entry-level position. So yeah, that's my call.
Yeah, no, I really like that suggestion of picking up a programming language, and it's an incredible tool to be able to look at a problem and think, oh, I can figure out a way to do that without manually clicking and typing and doing everything. And you just start learning all the different tricks and ways that you can make the computer work for you rather than just working on the computer. And so, yeah, I think it's both a great tool and a learning opportunity. And then Akansha, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think my advice is fairly simple. Like if you step into the cybersecurity world, right? I think it's a horizon of services. You'll see a breadth of different opportunities that you go into, right? So it might not be limited to what we just spoke about, right? I think security is now built into or just put into all the aspects of work that we have, right? So even if you're not going with cybersecurity, if you want to step into any other field, right, you will always see security injected into that, right? Which will definitely, I think, intrigue you to enter this field, right? So whether you are in any field, just think of implementing your solutions with a security perspective in mind, right? I think that's all what is needed.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to jump over at audience questions. And audience, if you've got questions, feel free to go and pop them into the Q&A tool. Top question here: which do you consider better, tokens or certificates? And Akansha, do you have?
I can take that up.
Opinion? Yeah, go. Why don't you go for it?
Yeah. I can take that up. I think the choice between tokens and certificates really depends on the context, right? And the use case that you are looking forward to, right? Tokens and certificates, in my opinion, serve different purposes, right? And they have different characteristics, right? So one might be suitable over the other, right? For example, tokens are often used for authentication and authorization in your systems and applications, right? And they are short-lived. For example, they expire after a certain period of time, right? Or they can be revoked if necessary. However, certificates are, I think we all know, they are digital documents, right? That actually help you to bind a key to an entity, right? So they are typically longer lived, right? And they have a longer lifespan compared to tokens, right? So if you have like a PKI infrastructure, if you have a certificate that's issued from a certificate authority that your application trusts, right? I think you can go for a certificate. However, I think if you require like a short-term access control, right? Then you can go for tokens, right? So in some cases, both tokens and certificates can also go together, right? For enhanced security, like you can use certificates for client authentication, and in addition, you can use tokens for like API control or access control, right? So like in my opinion, the choice between tokens and certificates should be based on your specific requirement of the project or the use case that you want to implement.
Yeah, the right tool for the job, as it were. All right, next question we have. An instructor advised me to start from desktop support. I have been doing that for 3 years now while taking more trainings, but no one is ready to give me an entry-level position, which will be asking for 15 years experience. So I think this is about how you transition from a role where you don't have that experience yet, and all the opportunities are for roles that require a bunch of experience. And we kind of talked about this on how you get in from a non-technical background, but let's go, Priyanka. What are the avenues you can take? How do you kind of break in the door and start getting that more technical role?
Yeah. So like if, as I said, like, if you really want to, enter into a technical role, you can actually do some kind of real-time POCs, as I mentioned earlier. You can take an Azure credit and, explore yourself by doing some POCs in your local, and see what are the, what kind of jobs that you want to enter, right? What's your interest. So you can actually, concentrate on those topics and, and kind of, adapt those technologies and learn those technologies to, and then start applying for those positions. So that way, it is easy that you're prepared before applying for any positions.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Julie.
I'd like to add in, network a lot, right? Like you should go to conferences and or events nearby. It doesn't have to be big, expensive conferences, but there's meetups that happen regularly on this topic. Just show up and, prepare your resume, showcase your interest, and just have the conversation on why. What are you looking to learn? And again, stay open to perhaps starting at an entry level. Entry level positions do not require 15 years of experience. So start there, show you're smart, show your interest, and you'll grow rapidly. So I think it's just reaching out, putting yourself out there that's going to help quite a bit.
Yeah, Julie, I mean, I think to build on what you're saying, it can feel like you're not making progress when you're going out and networking and meeting person after person and telling them that, hey, I'm interested in this space. I'm looking for work in this space. I want to find out more. I just like to hear your advice. And you can feel like you have conversation after conversation where nothing happens, but you are opening doors for yourself and eventually something will connect. And building on what Priyanka was saying, if you have that time to work on some projects on your own and you start building some experience with just personal projects, it gives you something to talk about when you're networking. You can speak to the experience that you have had in just learning, and there are avenues that you can take for yourself, and you really just have to get out there and do, and eventually the odds will line up. All right, next question for us. Passwordless authentication through biometrics is still a challenge. Work from home in conjunction presents several flaws where an influential actor's creds can be stolen. What are the guardrails around it, or what can we think of to overcome these? Akansha, can you take this one?
Yeah, I can go ahead and take this one. Yeah. I think we spoke briefly about this, right? Passwordless authentication through biometrics, or I think we have personally implemented it at LinkedIn as well, right? So this offers convenience, but it does indeed have its own set of challenges, right? Especially in this remote work from home environment, right? Some guardrails that we have put are multi-factor authentication, as I mentioned, right? So you can consider implementing an MFA approach, right, that combines biometrics with another factor, right, such as an OTP if you can send to a trusted device, or you can have like any FIDO2 implementation or anything, right? Just consider combining both biometrics with another set of factor, right? One of the other things that you can do, which we also implement, is trusting the device, right? How do you implement trustworthy checks for the device, right? Verify the device that is being used for authentication, whether it's secure, whether it's compromised. And one of the things to do this is use strong encryption techniques, right? Use secure channels for transmitting the data you have and everything. And I think one of the other important aspect to this is user education, right? Educate your users about the security, educate them about biometric authentication, the importance of securing their devices, encourage them to use screen locks, biometric logs, making secure connections, and all of these things. I think that's my take on the guardrails that we are using and which should be used commonly.
Yeah, the biometrics plus device trust is really a good combination, because then a threat actor has to not only be able to compromise one of those things, they actually have to have a physical device, and nothing's ever perfectly secure, but that makes the bar so much higher. You can't be in a different country having the user's device, right? That's a physical barrier that's much harder to breach.
I think I want to highlight a point, which is both of you talked about multi-factor authentication and FIDO2 compliance. So that's at the user end, right? Like we're kind of trying to make sure that from a login standpoint, at the device, at the endpoint, we are being as secure as we potentially can. Priyanka, when you talked about the challenges in this space, one of the things we do think about on a regular basis is problems can happen, issues can happen, right? And how resilient is the security team in quickly addressing that issue? To keep that in mind, because no matter how much technology advances, there's always going to be loopholes. There's always going to be issues and ways that hackers find. And so building in not just at the endpoint, but also at the corporate level to when you get access to the resources, other additional guardrails is going to go a long way in ensuring that we've built a foolproof system. So being resilient as well as being able to quickly react and take action and having those options available and being flexible. The system, the ecosystem that you're building, having the flexibility to do that is key. And I think that's true of passwordless, biometrics, no matter what approach you take.
Thank you, Julie. Our next question is, as a student looking forward to joining the cybersecurity sector, I want to work in the SOC sector, which is a Security Operations Center. What coding languages should I focus on?
So I'll take that.
Yes, go for it, Priyanka.
Yeah. So like whoever is entering the SOC center, right? It's a very first of all, it's a great career choice with a promising future, right? So it involves like a lot of incident detections and response, and it requires definitely coding skills as well. Like as you asked, what coding skill is required, I would highly recommend Python, where where due to its very simplicity and versatility, like you can use Python for various different tasks to automate this incident threats happening, right? And also you can develop like custom security tools. You can also learn some bash scripting or like the structured query language, which helps you preparing for querying all those queries, and you can retrieve and analyze the data that you required in this field. Yeah, I mean, there are different languages, but personally, I feel, you can learn Python and, some kind of bash scripting, which helps you in learning helps you towards this role in the SOC.
Yeah. So Python is the go-to. You heard it here first. All right.
I think, Tyler, like scripting in general, right? Like, I mean, there's no way. I mean, even if you don't know Python right now, if you've done scripting of some sort, it's definitely going to help.
Yeah, that's a good clarification.
I like to add just another point.
Please go ahead. Don't let me move things along.
Yeah, I think in addition to the coding languages, right, you should also focus on the fundamentals, right? The network protocols, operating systems, security tools, all of these count under SOC, right? And that is because we do handle the SOC procedures, we have SOC audits and all, right? So just continuous learning and staying up to date with the latest threats that you have, right? Or the latest tools that we have in cybersecurity, because that will help you to audit the stuff, right, and measure basically where you stand. So I think it's just not the coding language. There are other things also that count for that.
Oh, fantastic. So I think this is going to be our last question, which we'll send to everybody. How do you see the landscape of identity management evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? And Julie, you can jump in first.
We touched on this a little bit earlier, right? Like, so I think the possibilities are endless, no matter which way you pivot this. But machine learning's been a thing. We've gathered tons and tons and tons of information, and now we can put AI on top of it and like create some of the delightful experiences. At the end of the day, when I think about this whole experience, it should be seamless. Really, as an end user, you should not even know that authentication is happening, authorization is happening. You should just be able to go about your work. Your date and your productivity should be at its maximum, right? Like, that's the way I think about the future. We are a ways from getting to that point. But, all the technology that's coming into play, just a lot that we can foresee in that space.
Awesome. Priyanka, what's 10 years out look like in your mind?
Yeah, so as I explained earlier as well, how this industry is evolving, right? So there are a lot of different tools which are coming in, which is helping companies to make the security, even better and better. I feel like, introducing this zero trust model, I have actually heard about, where people are thinking about like using the palms, which like like in your vein to like to identify that who you are, right? So I think we are way ahead going towards the future in technology.
Awesome. And Akansha, what's your take?
I think I'm really excited about how AI is going to take shape into this, right? Because there are a lot of things. I think some things have already been started, like using your behavioral analytics, right, to see whether you are the trusted person to log in or give you access, right? So I think with all this AI going everywhere, right, I think it will be good to see how that is taking shape.
Awesome. Okay, and we are at time. I want to thank everybody for joining us and thank WISES for having us. That's our time.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you for your time, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.